Close your eyes and imagine the hushed world of a Viking longhouse, not through dramatic battles, but through the subtle symphony of daily life. Hear the gentle crackle of a central hearth, the rhythmic thud of weaving, and the distant calls echoing across a harsh, unforgiving landscape. This isn't just history. It's an invitation to experience survival in a way you've never heard before. Imagine yourself stepping into the dim interior of a Viking longhouse, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and earth. The central hearth glows softly, its embers casting a warm, flickering light across the packed dirt floor. This fire is more than a source of heat. It is the very pulse of the home, a constant companion in the long northern nights. As the flames dance quietly, they ward off the chill that seeps through the turf walls, reminding us of the fragile balance between comfort and the elements outside. The hearth was constructed with care, a shallow pit lined with stones gathered from nearby streams or fields. Vikings would tend it meticulously, adding logs of birch or pine, their bark peeling away in the heat. Crackle is subtle, a low murmur that fills the space without overwhelming it. Around this fire, families gathered not for grand tales, but for the simple rhythms of existence, mending tools, sharing a meal, or staring into the coals as the day faded. Consider the fuel itself. In Scandinavia's rugged terrain, wood was a precious resource, often hauled from distant forests on sleds during winter. The smoke rose lazily through a hole in the roof, mingling with the thatch and turf above. This setup, practical and unadorned, ensured that the fire burned steadily, providing light for tasks when the sun dipped low. The warmth radiated outward, drawing people closer, fostering a quiet sense of community in an otherwise isolated world. In the heart of this Viking dwelling, the hearth served as a communal anchor where stories were shared in low voices. During the endless winter evenings, families would huddle around its glow, their faces illuminated by the soft orange light that pushed back the encroaching shadows. Simple iron pots hung over the flames on chains forged by local blacksmiths, bubbling with stews made from whatever the land provided. The scent of boiling grains and dried herbs mingled with the smoky air, creating a familiar aroma that spoke of sustenance and routine. Smoke curled upward in lazy spirals, escaping through the vent above while leaving a thin layer of soot on the wooden beams. This central fire not only cooked meals but also preserved food through smoking, ensuring provisions lasted through the harsh seasons ahead. The tools scattered near the hearth reflected the practical ingenuity of Viking life, each item crafted for durability rather than ornament. A wooden spoon carved from birch lay beside a stone quern for grinding barley into flour, its surface worn smooth from years of use. Nearby, a pair of tongs made from twisted iron rested on the hearthstone, ready to adjust logs or retrieve hot embers. These implements were often passed down through generations, embodying the continuity of daily survival. The hearth's warmth of dried herbs hung from the rafters, their faint rustling adding to the subtle sounds of the home. In this space, every object had a purpose, tied to the endless cycle of preparation and maintenance that defined existence. As night deepened, the fire's crackle grew softer, lulling inhabitants into a restful state amid the longhouse's enveloping quiet. Embers popped occasionally, sending tiny sparks dancing upward like fleeting stars in the dim interior. Blankets woven from wool were drawn closer, their rough texture a reminder of the sheep tended outside. The hearth's heat seeped into the earthen floor, warming bare feet that had trudged through snow or mud earlier in the day. This warmth was a precious commodity, conserved by banking the fire with ashes before sleep. In such moments, the longhouse felt like a sanctuary, shielding its people from the wild world beyond its walls. The construction of the hearth itself was a testament to Viking resourcefulness, built to maximize efficiency in a land of limited fuel. Stones were carefully selected for their heat-retaining properties, arranged in a circle to contain the flames without wasting energy. A low bench of turf or wood encircled it, providing seating for those tending the fire or warming themselves. Over time, the stones blackened from constant use, absorbing the essence of countless meals and gatherings. The fire's management was a daily ritual, starting with kindling gathered from the forest's underbrush. This routine fostered a deep connection to the environment, where every log burn represented labor and foresight. Light from the hearth flickered across woven tapestries on the walls, simple patterns depicting runes or everyday motifs for insulation and decoration. These hangings muffled sound slightly, contributing to the hushed atmosphere within the longhouse. Pots of clay or soapstone simmered with porridges of oats and peas, staples that sustained through lean times. The gentle bubbling was a constant undercurrent, blending with breaths and occasional murmurs. Families shared this space intimately, their lives interwoven like the threads in their clothing. The hearth's role extended to healing, where herbal infusions steeped to ease ailments from the cold climate died as the fire burned low. Ashes accumulated, later used to fertilize fields or make lye for soap production. This cycle of reuse highlighted the Vikings' pragmatic approach to resources, wasting nothing in their challenging world. Poker of wood or metal lay ready to stir the coals, ensuring even burning throughout the night. The subtle hiss of steam from damp logs added layers to the auditory tapestry of home. Inhabitants learned early to respect the fire's power, teaching children its dangers through quiet lessons. Thus, the hearth embodied both nurture and caution in equal measure. The longhouse's design centered around this hearth, with sleeping platforms raised along the sides to capture rising heat. Benches doubled as beds, stuffed with hay or feathers for modest comfort against the chill. Furs from hunted animals draped over them, their soft pelts trapping body warmth effectively. The air grew heavier with the mingled sense of human habitation and cooking residues. This setup allowed for efficient use of space in dwellings that housed extended families. Privacy was minimal, yet the shared warmth fostered bonds that strengthened community resilience. During storms, the hearth became even more vital, its flames a beacon against howling winds outside. Rain might patter on the turf roof, but inside, the fire's steadiness provided reassurance. Tools for fire maintenance, like bellows of leather, were kept close to revive dying embers quickly. The glow reflected in eyes weary from the day's labors, inviting reflection on past harvests or future plans. In this way, the hearth was a silent witness to the ebb and flow of Viking life. Its enduring presence offered a sense of permanence in an unpredictable landscape. Cooking techniques evolved around the hearth, with spits for roasting meat over open flames when available. Bread was baked on flat stones heated in the coals, its aroma filling the air with comforting familiarity. Vegetables like turnips or leeks were boiled in cauldrons, their flavors enhanced by wild herbs foraged nearby. These meals were simple yet nourishing, designed to fuel bodies for demanding work. The process was unhurried, allowing flavors to develop slowly over the low heat. Sharing food around the fire reinforced social ties, turning necessity into quiet ritual. The hearth also facilitated craftsmanship, providing light for intricate tasks like carving bone combs or repairing fishing nets. Needles of bone or metal glinted in the firelight as women sewed garments from homespun cloth, and might sharpen axes on whetstones, the rhythmic scrape blending with the fire's sounds. This productivity extended into the evening, making use of every available moment. The warmth encouraged focus without haste in a world where daylight was often short. Thus, the hearth illuminated not just the space, but the ingenuity of its people. As seasons changed, the hearth's demands shifted, requiring more fuel in winter's grip. Stockpiles of wood were amassed in summer, dried under eaves to burn cleanly. Peat from bogs served as alternative fuel in treeless areas, its earthy smell distinct yet welcoming. The fire's management became a family affair, with roles assigned based on age and strength. This division of labor ensured the hearth never faltered, a symbol of collective endurance. In quieter times, elders recounted lore by its light, preserving knowledge for generations. The longhouse's smoke-filled air, while hazy, carried medicinal properties from certain woods burned for health. Birch, for instance, was favored for its purifying qualities against ailments. The gentle haze softened outlines, creating an intimate cocoon for rest. Children played nearby with wooden toys, their laughter subdued in the warm glow. Pets like dogs curled close, adding to the layered warmth of bodies and fire. This harmony of life around the hearth painted a picture of resilient domesticity. Tools evolved with needs, from basic fire starters of flint and steel to more elaborate hearths in wealthier homes. Yet, even in modest longhouses, efficiency reigned supreme in design. The central placement allowed heat distribution to all corners, vital in cramped quarters. Over time, improvements like clay linings reduced smoke escape, enhancing livability. Vikings adapted these features based on local materials, showcasing regional variations. The hearth, in essence, was adaptable, mirroring the people who built it. Daily cleaning around the hearth involved sweeping ashes into pits for later use, maintaining order in the home. Prunes of twigs whisked away debris, the swish of familiar morning sound. Fresh herbs scattered on the floor absorbed odors, refreshed by the fire's heat. This upkeep was methodical, preventing buildup that could lead to hazards. Women often oversaw this, their hands calloused from constant tending. Such routines grounded life in practicality and care. The hearth's light danced on stored provisions. Jars of preserved berries or salted fish lining shelves. These reserves were crucial. Guarded against rodents with simple traps, the fire's proximity dried hanging meats, extending their usability. Planning for scarcity was ingrained, with the hearth aiding in every step. In bountiful times, feasts warmed by its flames celebrated survival. Yet even then, moderation prevailed in this unforgiving setting. As daylight waned, the hearth took center stage, its embers the only illumination in the deepening dusk. Lanterns of horn or simple candles supplemented when needed, but fuel conservation was key. Stories unfolded in whispers, tales of gods and ancestors to educate and entertain. The rhythm of voices matched the fire's gentle pulse, soothing listeners toward sleep. In this ambience, worries of the morrow seemed distant, enveloped in present warmth. The longhouse, alive with subtle energy, invited peaceful surrender. The symbolic role of the hearth extended to rituals where offerings of food were cast into flames for luck. This practice connected daily life to spiritual beliefs, blending the mundane with the divine. Runes carved on hearthstones sought protection from ills or storms. The fire's eternal nature mirrored ideas of renewal and continuity. Families honored it through careful maintenance and quiet devotion. Thus, it was more than utility, it was the soul of the home. Maintaining the hearth required vigilance against sparks that could ignite thatch or straw. Water buckets stood ready, a precaution born of experience. The balance between heat and safety was delicate, learned through generations. In summer, the fire burned lower, sufficient for cooking without overheating the space. Adaptability was key in varying climates across Viking territories. This flexibility underscored their mastery over the environment. The sounds of the hearth varied with fuel. Oak burned steadily with deep cracks, while pine popped lively. Each type influenced the atmosphere, from calming to slightly invigorating. Vikings chose based on availability and mood, curating their home's auditory landscape. The hiss of sap from fresh wood added moisture to dry air. In stillness, these noises became a meditative backdrop. They wove into the fabric of memory, evoking home wherever one roamed. As communities grew, hearths in larger longhouses accommodated more, fostering village ties through shared fires. Guests were welcomed with warmth, hospitality a core value. The fire's glow symbolized generosity, offering comfort to travelers. Exchanges of news occurred here in unhurried conversations. Bonds strengthened over shared heat, vital in isolated settlements. The hearth thus bridged individuals to the wider world. The legacy of these hearths persists in modern Scandinavian homes, where fireplaces evoke ancestral comfort. Though technology has changed, the draw of a crackling fire remains timeless. It speaks to a primal need for warmth and light in darkness. Vikings perfected this in their longhouses, a testament to ingenuity. Reflecting on it invites appreciation for simple securities and quiet contemplation. One can almost feel its embrace. The longhouse hearth was never truly alone. It was surrounded by the quiet presence of everyday objects, told the story of a family's endurance. A heavy iron cauldron, blackened from countless uses, rested on 3 stones above the embers, its contents simmering slowly through the day. Beside it stood a stack of flat baking stones, warm gradually until they could crisp thin loaves of barley bread. Wooden bowls and horn spoons lay neatly arranged on a low shelf carved into the wall, ready for the evening meal. The faint scent of fermented fish or dried meat hung in the air, preserved by the constant smoke that drifted upward. Every surface near the fire bore the gentle patina of soot, a quiet reminder of years spent tending this vital center. Children often sat closest to the warmth, their small hands busy with simple tasks like sorting seeds or twisting wool into thread. Fire's glow reflected in their eyes as they listened to the soft voices of elders, recounting the day's events. Their stirred pots with long wooden ladles, tasting broth seasoned with wild garlic or dill gathered in summer. Fathers returned from outdoor work, shaking off the chill before settling on the bench to sharpen tools in the steady light. The rhythm of these movements was unhurried, each gesture shaped by necessity rather than haste. In this shared space, generations overlapped, passing skills and stories without urgency. The smoke that filled the upper reaches of the longhouse served more than one purpose. It cured hanging strips of mutton and drove away insects during warmer months. Bundles of herbs, juniper, yarrow, and meadowsweet were tied to the rafters, releasing their faint aromas as the heat rose. The haze softened the harsh lines of the interior, creating a dreamlike veil that blurred the edges of the world outside. Coughs were common in the smoky air, yet people grew accustomed to it, accepting the trade-off for warmth and preservation. Windows were small and few, covered with stretched hides or shutters to keep heat in, so the fire remained the primary source of light. This dependence forged a deep, unspoken bond between the inhabitants and their flame. At dawn, first task was often to rake away ashes and revive the embers with fresh kindling and a gentle breath through a hollow reed. Fire responded slowly, crackling back to life as the longhouse stirred around it. Breakfast porridge thickened over the renewed flames, its steam mingling with the morning chill that lingered on the floor. The scent of warming grain spread through the space, drawing sleepy figures from their sleeping benches. Hot stones were sometimes wrapped in cloth and placed at the foot of beds to ease the transition from rest to wakefulness. These small rituals anchored the day, providing comfort in their predictability. The hearth's position in the center of the longhouse ensured that no corner remained entirely cold. Though the ends were always cooler than the middle, families ranged their sleeping areas accordingly, with the most vulnerable elders and infants claiming spots nearest the warmth. Thick woolen blankets and reindeer hides provided additional layers, their weight a reassuring pressure against the body. Gentle rise and fall of breathing blended with the fire's soft sounds, creating a lullaby of survival. Dreams came easily in this cocoon, shaped by the day's labors and the ever-present glow. Even in sleep, people remained attuned to the fire's needs, stirring occasionally to add a log. Guests arriving from neighboring farms were always led to the hearth first, offered a place of honor and a bowl of warm ale or broth. Hospitality was a quiet duty, rooted in the understanding that alliances and favors were essential in isolated communities. The fire welcomed strangers as it did family, its light revealing faces weathered by the same landscape. Conversations flowed softly, touching on weather, harvests, or news carried along trade routes. One raised their voice, the longhouse absorbed sound, encouraging measured words. In this way, the hearth became a bridge between households, strengthening the web of mutual reliance. The maintenance of fire-starting materials was a constant concern, with tinder boxes of dry moss and flint kept in dry corners away from damp. Striking sparks required patience, especially on mornings when humidity lingered in the air. Once lit, the new flame was coaxed carefully, shielded from drafts by cupped hands or a curved piece of bark. This delicate beginning contrasted with the robust blaze it could become, a reminder of nature's dual nature. Vikings respected this process, teaching it early to ensure the family line could always summon warmth. The skill was as vital as knowing how to sail or farm. Over time, the hearthstones themselves became imbued with memory, cracked in places from sudden temperature changes yet still holding firm. Some families carved simple marks into them, runes for protection, or tally lines for significant years. The stones absorbed heat slowly and released it long after the flames died down, warming the floor through the night. Bare feet pressed against their smooth surfaces, drawing comfort from the stored warmth. In colder regions, additional smaller fires might be lit inside rooms, but the central hearth remained the heart. Its presence defined the longhouse's home wherever it was built. As evening deepened, the fire was banked with thick logs that would burn slowly until morning, their surfaces glowing red in the darkness. The longhouse settled into quiet, broken only by the occasional pop of settling wood or the distant call of a night bird. Shadows lengthened along the curved walls, merging with the smoke above. Bodies relaxed into the benches, muscles easing after the day's demands. The rhythmic breathing of sleepers joined the fire's gentle murmur, creating a symphony of rest. In this embrace of immerse, worries dissolved, leaving only the quiet certainty of another day sustained. The hearth's light revealed the simple beauty of handcrafted items, carved wooden cups, woven baskets, and iron hooks forged with care. Each object bore the marks of use, polished by countless hands over years. The glow softened imperfections, turning rough textures into something almost gentle. Stories were etched into these items as surely as into memory, passed along with their ownership. The fire illuminated this legacy nightly, a silent guardian of continuity. As eyes closed, the last image often lingered on dancing flames, carrying thoughts into peaceful dreams. As the warmth from the hearth spreads gently through the longhouse, your attention drifts toward a steady, rhythmic sound rising from one of the raised platforms along the wall. It is the soft thud and swish of a warp-weighted loom where a woman sits in quiet concentration, her hands moving with practiced ease. The loom itself is simple yet ingenious, a sturdy or bright frame of oak or pine, with stone weights hanging from the vertical threads to keep them taut. Each pass of the wooden shuttle through the warp produces a muted thump, as the weft thread is pressed into place with a beater of bone or wood. The fabric grows slowly, row by row, its pattern emerging in subtle stripes or checks of natural wood colors: creamy white, soft gray, warm brown. This is not hurried work, it is the patient rhythm of necessity, turning raw fleece into the garments and sails that protect and propel Viking lives. The wool comes from the sheep tended outside, shorn each spring with iron blades that follow the contours of the animal's body. Once gathered, the fleece is washed in streams warmed by the sun, then carded with combs of iron teeth to align the fibers into soft, airy rovings. Spinning follows next, performed on drop spindles whirled with clay or stone, the spinner's fingers twisting the thread as the weight turns steadily below. These spindles are small enough to carry while walking or watching children, allowing work to fill every spare moment. The resulting yarn is strong and slightly uneven, perfect for durable cloth that withstands wind and salt spray. In the longhouse, balls of this yarn rest in woven baskets near the loom, ready to be wound onto shuttles for the next section of fabric. Weaving is primarily women's work, passed from mother to daughter in quiet hours by the firelight. The loom's weights clack softly against one another as the tension shifts, a sound as familiar as breathing to those who grew up within these walls. Patterns are simple but meaningful: diamond twills for warmth, plain weaves for everyday use. Occasionally, a tablet woven band adds a brighter border, its small square cards turned methodically to create geometric designs. Finished cloth is thick and heavy, designed to trap air and hold warmth against the biting northern cold. Complete, it is filled in warm water and trodden underfoot to tighten the weave, then hung near the hearth to dry in the smoky air. Nearby, the gentle scrape of a cornstone draws your ear toward the preparation of food. Two women sit opposite each other, turning the upper stone in slow circles over barley or oat spread on the lower slab. The grind is steady and unhurried, the coarse meal collecting in a shallow groove around the edge. This hand grain is small enough for household use, its basalt surface imported from distant quarries or found on ancient beaches. The resulting flour is coarse and full of bran, giving bread a hearty texture and long-keeping quality. The rhythmic turning becomes almost meditative, the sound blending with the loom's thud into a layered harmony of sustenance and craft. Pots suspended over the hearth contain the day's main meal, usually a thick stew of grains, legumes, and whatever vegetables the season allows: cabbages, turnips, leeks, or wild herbs. Dried fish or salted meat adds flavor when fresh protein is scarce. The bone simmered long to extract every bit of nourishment. Broth thickens slowly, its steam carrying scents of dill and onion through the hazy air. Skimming the surface with a wooden spoon removes impurities, ensuring the stew remains clear and palatable. Portions are generous but measured, mindful of stores that must last until the next harvest or fishing season. Eating is communal, from shared bowls with spoons of horn or wood. Conversation kept low to match the quiet atmosphere. The soft splash of water in a wooden bucket signals the next layer of daily sustenance, as milk is carefully poured from clay vessels into wider bowls for skimming cream. Cows grazed on sparse summer pastures yield modest amounts, but every drop is valued in this land where fresh dairy is a quiet luxury. The cream rises slowly, separated by hand to be churned later into butter that will keep through the winter when salted, and packed in small barrels. Nearby, a woman kneads dough on a flat board, her palms pressing rye and barley flour mixed with water and a pinch of precious salt. The dough is shaped into round loaves, scored lightly on top, then laid on heated stones at the edge of the hearth to bake. The aroma of rising bread spreads gradually, a comforting promise that mingles with the ever-present wood smoke. Butter churning happens in a tall, narrow plunger churn carved from alder or birch, its rhythmic up and down motion producing a muted sloshing sound. The work is shared among the women, taking turns so no one tires too quickly, allowing conversation to flow in low murmurs about the weather or the health of the livestock. When the butter finally forms, it is washed in cold water to remove buttermilk, then pressed into wooden molds and printed with simple patterns. The leftover buttermilk is saved for drinking or soaking grains, ensuring nothing goes to waste. This cycle of transformation turns basic milk into lasting nourishment, a quiet alchemy performed in the longhouse shadows. The finished butter, pale and firm, is stored in cool corners wrapped in cloth, ready to enrich thin porridges or spread on fresh bread. Cheese making follows similar patient rhythms. The rennet from calf stomachs added to warm milk in wide troughs. The curds separate gradually, gathered with slotted spoons into woven baskets that allow whey to drain away slowly. The whey itself is not discarded. It feeds pigs or is drunk for its nourishing properties on long working days. The pressed curds are salted and shaped into wheels, then hung in the rafters to age in the smoky air, developing a firm texture and tangy flavor. These cheeses become vital winter provisions, sliced thinly to stretch supplies when fresh food grows scarce. The process demands attention but no haste, fitting seamlessly into the longhouse's unhurried pace. Further along the bench, the gentle scrape of a knife on wood reveals someone carving spoons or bowls from birch burl, choosing pieces with tight grain for durability. The shavings curl away softly, falling to the floor where they will later be swept into the hearth as kindling. Other hands repair fishing nets, fingers threading twine through mesh with bone needles. Knots tied firmly yet quickly. Leather is softened over the knee, cut and stitched into shoes or belts using awls and waxed linen thread. Each task produces its own quiet soundscape thud, creak-layering into the overall symphony of craft that sustains the household. No movement is wasted, even idle moments are filled with mending or preparation. Drying racks near the hearth hold thin slices of meat or whole fish, their surfaces gradually curing in the warm, smoky updraft. Herring and cod caught in summer abundance are split and hung on wooden rods, turning golden over weeks of gentle exposure. The smoke acts as both preservative and flavor, penetrating deeply to ward off spoilage in the damp climate. Mushrooms gathered from forest edges and wild herbs are strung on threads, shrinking slowly as moisture leaves them. Berries spread on woven trays desiccate into chewy stores of sweetness for the dark months. This preservation is methodical, planned far in advance, reflecting a deep understanding of the season's unforgiving cycle. The loom continues its steady rhythm in the background, the weaver occasionally pausing to adjust tension or change the shuttle. Progress is measured not in speed but in consistency, each new row building on the last without rush. Fabric will become a tunic, a sail, or a blanket, whatever the household needs most. Nearby, a young girl practices spinning, her drop spindle turning more smoothly with each attempt under quiet guidance. Skills are absorbed gradually through observation and gentle correction, ensuring they endure across generations. In this way, craft becomes more than labor. It is the quiet transmission of survival itself. As the day lengthens within the longhouse walls, the various tasks of craft and sustenance continue their gentle interplay, each feeding into the next without demand for speed. Woman lifts the freshly baked loaves from the hearthstones with a flat wooden peel, setting them on a woven mat to cool slowly in the smoky air. The crust crackles faintly as it settles, releasing steam scented with the earthy depth of barley and rye. Nearby, another gathers the cooled butter into a small crock, pressing it down firmly to exclude air and extend its life. The churn is rinsed with cold water drawn from the bucket, the rhythmic swish echoing softly before the vessel is turned upside down to dry. These small completions bring quiet satisfaction, marking progress in the endless cycle of provision. The loom's rhythm persists unchanged, the weaver now incorporating a finer thread for a decorative band that will edge a cloak. Her fingers move with precision born of countless hours, turning small tablets to shift the pattern in subtle waves. The sound of cards flipping is light and regular, almost like distant rain on the turf roof. Balls of dyed yarn, soft blues from woad, muted reds from madder root wait in a basket, their colors subdued in the firelight yet promising brightness against winter gray. The growing fabric hangs heavy with its stone weights, swaying gently with each beat of the weaver's sword. In time, this piece will wrap shoulders against the wind or catch the breeze on a sailing ship. At the quern, the grinding shifts to a new batch of grain, the women changing places so arms rest in turn. The coarse flour is sifted through a horsehair sieve into a wooden bowl, finer particles reserved for special flatbreads while the bran enriches daily porridge. Dust rises lightly, settling on hands and aprons like pale snow. The lower stone grows warm from friction, its surface polished smoother with every season. Children watch from nearby benches, learning the motion by mimicry before they are old enough to take a full turn. This shared labor strengthens bonds, turning necessity into a quiet ritual of togetherness. Preservation work continues overhead, where new bundles of wild garlic and nettles are tied and hung among the rafters. Their fresh green scent cuts briefly through the smoke, before mellowing into the overall aroma of the longhouse. Fish on the drying racks are turned carefully, ensuring even curing as their flesh firms under the gentle heat. The process is watched with calm vigilance, knowing that a successful cure means meals through the leanest months. Jars of pickled cabbage and beets line low shelves, their brine bubbling faintly as fermentation completes. Each jar represents summer labor stored against winter's grasp. Pear and creation blend seamlessly as a man mends a torn fishing net, his bone needle flashing in the firelight. The twine is strong hemp, soaked in pine tar for water resistance, its scent lingering on his fingers. Knots are tied with economy, each one secure yet not overly tight. Beside him, a younger boy whittles a new shuttle for the loom, shaping the wood with small, careful strokes of a knife. Shavings fall like soft feathers, later gathered for tinder. Guidance is offered in quiet words, corrections gentle, allowing mistakes to teach without discouragement. As evening approaches, the day's efforts converge in the preparation of the main meal. The thick stew is tasted and adjusted, a handful of dried herbs added for depth. Bread is sliced thickly, butter spread sparingly to savor its richness. Cheese wheels are brought down from the rafters, a thin wedge cut for each person. Bowls are filled and passed along the benches, steam rising in slow curls. The longhouse fills with the soft sounds of eating spoons against wood, quiet murmurs of appreciation. In this shared sustenance, the rhythms of craft find their purpose, nourishing bodies that will rise tomorrow to continue the same gentle cycle. As the rhythms of craft and sustenance settle into their familiar cadence within the longhouse, faint sounds from the world outside begin to filter through the thick turf walls. An heavy timber door, a distant sheep bleats softly, its call carrying across the misty fields that surround the homestead. The sound is muted, almost dreamlike, blending with the low clucking of hens scratching in the yard just beyond the threshold. These animals are not distant abstractions. They're constant companions whose lives intertwine with the household's survival. The sheep provide wool for the loom you heard earlier, milk for churning, and eventually meat when necessity demands. Their presence is a quiet reassurance, a living larder that grazes on the tough grasses of the northern landscape. The homestead itself spreads modestly around the longhouse, a patchwork of small enclosures, built from woven hazel branches or stacked stones. Inside one pen, a few cows stand patiently, their breath visible in the cool morning air as they chew cud gathered from summer pastures. Their milk yields are small compared to modern breeds, yet every pail is treasured, carried carefully back to the longhouse in wooden buckets sealed with pitch. Goats climb nimbly on rocky outcrops nearby, browsing on shrubs and tree shoots that sheep ignore, adding variety to the dairy and providing hides for leather. Pigs root contentedly in a shaded corner, fed on kitchen scraps and acorns foraged from nearby oak groves. Their contented grunts drift faintly inward, a low undercurrent to the interior sounds. Chickens move freely during daylight hours, pecking at insects and seeds in the yard, their feathers ruffling softly in the breeze. Eggs are gathered daily from nests hidden in the thatch of outbuildings or under overturned baskets, each one a small gift of protein in a diet heavy with grains. The rooster's occasional crow marks time more reliably than any clock, announcing dawn even through overcast skies. These birds require little care beyond protection from foxes at night, when they roost safely inside a small coop attached to the longhouse wall. Their quiet industry adds subtle movement to the homestead, a gentle bustle that contrasts with the stillness of winter. Further out, a horse grazes in a larger fenced meadow, its tail swishing lastly against flies. Vikings valued sturdy ponies for transport and plowing small fields, their strength essential for hauling timber or sledges of peat. The soft thud of hooves on damp earth reaches the longhouse only faintly, yet it carries the promise of mobility in a rugged terrain. Dogs lounge near the door, ears pricking at unfamiliar sounds, their role as guardians and hunting companions woven into daily life. Their occasional bark is low and measured, never frantic, trained to alert without unnecessary alarm. These animals form an extended family, their needs and contributions shaping the household's rhythm as surely as the hearth fire. The subtle creak of the longhouse timbers themselves adds another layer, as the structure settles gently under its heavy turf roof. Green sod layered thickly over birch bark and wooden planks insulates against the cold, while also providing grazing for a few sheep in lean times. The walls bow slightly outward with age, curved like the hull of an upturned ship, a design that echoes Viking boat building skill. Wind presses against this living roof, producing a faint rustle of grasses that grows louder only in storms. Inside, the timbers groan softly as temperature shifts, a reassuring sound that speaks of solidity in an unpredictable world. This shelter stands as a quiet bulwark, holding back the vastness outside while cradling the life within. The animals of the Viking homestead move through their days with the same unhurried rhythm, that governs life inside the longhouse, their needs attended to in quiet, methodical routines. Each morning, a young boy or girl carries wooden pails to the cows, settling on a low stool to milk with steady pulls that produce a soft, rhythmic squirt into the bucket. The warm milk steams gently in the cool air, its rich scent mingling with the earthy smell of the byre built against the longhouse wall. Goats receive similar attention, though their yield is smaller and their temperament more willful, requiring a calm voice and gentle hand to keep them still. The filled pails are carried carefully back inside, where the milk will be strained through cloth into clay pots for immediate use or longer storage. Sheep roam farther afield during the warmer months, watched by an older child or dog from a vantage point on a nearby hill. Their thick fleeces grow heavy by late spring, ready for shearing that happens in a cleared space near the enclosures. The sheep are held firmly but kindly while iron shears snip close to the skin, releasing great armfuls of wool that are rolled and stored in dry corners. The animals seem lighter afterward, moving with renewed energy across the sparse pasture. In autumn, lambs born earlier in the year are assessed quietly, some kept for breeding, others marked for slaughter before winter strains resources. These decisions are made without sentimentality, born of the constant need for balance in a harsh land. Pigs require less daily oversight, content to forage in their wooded pen where acorns and beech mass fall in season. Kitchen scraps weigh from cheese-making, vegetable trimmings. Stale bread are carried out in buckets and poured into a stone trough, drawing contented snuffles and grunts. The pigs grow steadily on this varied diet, their meat destined for salting and smoking when the first hard frosts arrive. Their sturdy builds make them resilient, able to root through light snow if needed. Though extra feed is provided in deep winter, the homestead benefits from their efficiency, turning waste into valuable protein with minimal effort. Hens scatter across the yard at dawn, released from their coop by the simple lift of a latch. They peck methodically at the ground, uncovering insects and grit that strengthen their eggshells. Nests are checked twice daily, fingers sliding gently beneath warm bodies to retrieve still warm eggs laid in straw or feather-lined hollows. The birds return to roost as light fades, guided by habit more than herding, the soft clucks fading into evening quiet. Foxes and martens pose constant threats, met with sturdy coop walls and watchful dogs that patrol the perimeter at night. This vigilance ensures the steady supply of eggs that supplements the household diet year-round. The horse or pony stands apart in stature and purpose, brushed down daily with a bundle of straw to keep its coat free of burrs and mud. Its mane and tail are combed gently, knots worked out with patience to prevent tangles that could chafe under harness. Oats or hay from small harvested plots supplement grazing, measured out in woven baskets to maintain strength without waste. Shoes of iron forged by a visiting smith or at a nearby settlement protect hooves on rocky paths, nailed carefully to avoid lameness. The animal's calm presence enables longer journeys to visit kin, trade at seasonal gatherings, or haul timber from distant woods. The longhouse itself responds to the world outside with subtle movements, its thick walls and heavy roof shifting almost imperceptibly as wind presses, or frost expands the ground beneath. The turf layers grow wild grasses and even small flowers in summer, attracting bees that hum faintly overhead. Rain patters softly on this living roof, soaking in rather than running off, keeping the interior dry even in prolonged wet weather. Snow accumulates in winter, adding extra insulation that muffles external sounds to a profound quiet. The structure endures season after season, patched with new sod or timber as needed, its curves forming a familiar silhouette against the northern sky. The quiet sounds of the homestead animals weave themselves into the daily awareness of those inside the longhouse, becoming as familiar as the crackle of the hearth or the thud of the loom. The lamb's soft bleat carries on the evening breeze, answered by its mother's low rumble from the pen nearest the door. Cows shift their weight in the byre, straw rustling beneath them as they settle for the night, their warm breath creating faint clouds in the cooling air. Goats bed down on a raised platform of stones, their small hooves clicking lightly before stillness falls. Pigs burrow into piles of bracken and leaves, their snorts fading into deep, contented breathing. Even the hens contribute a final subdued clucking as they arrange themselves on perches, feathers settling with a soft fluff. The dog stretches near the threshold, ears twitching at the distant hoot of an owl or the rustle of a small creature in the underbrush. Its presence offers quiet comfort, a living barrier between the sheltered family and the wilder world beyond the enclosures. The horse nickers softly once, perhaps dreaming of open trails, then stands in patient silence under the stars beginning to pierce the twilight. These nighttime sounds are gentle and sporadic, never jarring, tending into the greater hush that envelops the homestead as darkness deepens. Sleep comes easily to both human and animal, each trusting the familiar rhythms that have sustained them through countless seasons. Maintenance of the enclosures is an ongoing, unhurried task. Woven fences repaired with fresh hazel withers twisted into place, stone walls rebuilt where frost has pushed sections apart, gates of split timber swing on leather hinges, oiled occasionally with animal fat to prevent creaking. Pots between buildings are kept clear of mud with scattered stones or wooden planks laid end to end. The byre is mucked out regularly, soiled straw carried to a growing midden that will enrich small garden plots in spring. Every chore is performed with measured movements, mindful of the energy required for larger tasks like haymaking or wood gathering. The Longhouse timbers continue their subtle dialogue with the elements, expanding slightly in summer warmth and contracting in winter cold, producing faint groans that inhabitants scarcely notice anymore. Roof turf is patched each spring, new sod cut from nearby meadows and laid carefully to maintain the seamless green cover. Smoke from the hearth escapes through gaps designed for the purpose, rising lazily above the grassy ground before dispersing on the wind. Birds nest in the thick layers during warmer months, their early morning songs filtering down like distant music. This living roof not only insulates but connects the dwelling to the land itself, a quiet partnership of human craft and natural growth. In harsher weather, the animals draw closer to the Longhouse walls for shelter. Sheep huddling in a lean-to built against the eastern side, chickens tucked safely in their coop. Snow drifts against the curved walls, softening outlines and muffling sound until the world feels wrapped in cotton. The structure holds firm, its bold shape shedding weight naturally, preventing collapse under heavy loads. Inside, the hearth burns brighter to counter the deeper cold, while outside the animals endure with thick winter coats and stored fodder. Survival is a shared effort, each element of the homestead supporting the others in gentle, interdependent balance. As night fully claims the landscape, the echoes from the homestead fade into profound stillness, broken only by the occasional shift of an animal or the soft sigh of wind. Through grasses atop the roof, the Longhouse stands as a quiet center, its walls embracing both people and the sounds of their livelihood. In this enclosed world, life moves forward without urgency, sustained by the patient labor of hands and hooves alike. The rhythm is ancient and reassuring, inviting those within to release the day and drift toward restful sleep. As the quiet echoes of the homestead fade into the background, the world beyond the Longhouse walls begins to make its presence felt more insistently, though still in the gentlest of ways. A soft gust of wind presses against the turf roof, producing a faint sigh through the thatch and a subtle ripple across the grasses growing atop it. In the distance, the muted patter of rain begins, not a downpour but a steady whisper that soaks into the earth without urgency. The landscape surrounding the Viking farm is vast and unforgiving, rocky hills rising sharply, then soil clinging to slopes, forests of birch and pine stretching toward the horizon. Resources are never abundant, and survival depends on careful planning, deep knowledge of the land, and a quiet acceptance of its limits. Firewood is the most immediate concern after food, and stacks of split logs stand neatly against the outer wall, sheltered by an overhanging eave. Each piece was felled in late winter when sap ran low, dragged back on sledges over snow, then dried through summer to burn cleanly. birch burns hot and fast, pine slower with more resinous scent, while driftwood gathered from shores adds a salty note when available. The stack is built methodically, larger logs at the bottom, kindling bundled separately in a dry corner. Chopping is done with steady swings of an axe, rhythmic thud echoing softly across the yard on calm days. This reserve represents months of labor, bulwark against the long nights when temperatures drop and the wind howls without pause. Water comes from a nearby spring or stream, carried in buckets or larger barrels on a yoke across strong shoulders. That flow is clear and cold year-round, filtered naturally through stone and moss, requiring no boiling except in times of illness. In winter, snow is melted in pots by the hearth when pots become impassable. The process slow but reliable. Storage vessels of wood bound with iron hoops stand inside near the door, keeping a day's supply fresh and free of debris. Rainwater is sometimes collected in hollow troughs for washing clothes or watering small herb plots, every drop used thoughtfully. This constant attention to water ensures the household never thirsts even in dry spells. Fields are small and scattered, cleared laboriously from stony ground with iron-shod spades and the strength of oxen or human backs. Barley and oats grow best in the short northern summer, their stalks bending gently under infrequent warm rains. Weeds are pulled by hand in quiet rows, the soil turned carefully to preserve its thin fertility. Manure from the byre and midden is spread in spring, enriching the earth with what the animals return. Harvest comes early to beat first frosts, sickles swinging in measured arcs as sheaves are bound and stacked into small stooks to dry. The yield is modest, never taken for granted, stored in raised granaries to protect from damp and rodents. Gardens closer to the longhouse yield hardy vegetables, turnips swelling beneath broad leaves, leeks pushing through compacted soil, cabbage heads forming tight and firm. Birds like dill, parsley, and wild garlic are encouraged in patches, their scents released when brushed against. Berries and nuts are gathered from wild edges, cloudberries from bogs, hazelnuts from coppiced woods carried home in baskets woven the previous winter. Fishing in nearby fjords or rivers supplements the diet, lines set with bone hooks or nets cast from small boats. The catch is clean on the shore, guts buried as fertilizer, flesh brought back for immediate eating or preservation. The longhouse itself is designed for endurance, its thick walls and heavy roof a deliberate defense against the elements that press in from all sides. Wind finds few gaps in the carefully fitted timbers caulked with moss and tar where needed. Rain soaks into the turf rather than leaking through, keeping the interior dry even during prolonged storms. Snow weighs down gradually but sheds along the curved sides, preventing dangerous buildup. Repairs are ongoing, new thatch layered over old, cracked beams replaced with fresh oak from managed woods. This maintenance is quiet and constant, ensuring the shelter remains sound for generations. The unforgiving nature of the northern landscape reveals itself most clearly in winter, when daylight shrinks to a few pale hours and the ground hardens under layers of frost and snow. Preparations begin long before the first freeze, with extra hay stacked in lofts above the byre, cut from wet meadows in high summer when grasses grow tallest. Roots are lifted from the garden and buried in sand-filled pits near the longhouse, protected from the deepest cold. Dried fish and smoked meat hang higher in the rafters, out of reach of hungry rodents that grow bolder as food grows scarce outside. Firewood stacks are covered with spare thatch or hides to keep snow from soaking the lower layers. Every available space is used wisely, turning the homestead into a quiet fortress against the season's long siege. Travel becomes rare once snow lies deep, pots marked with branches or stones to guide return in whiteouts. The horse is stabled closer to the longhouse, its warmth adding to the byre's modest heat. Fed carefully from stored fodder to maintain strength for essential tasks. Sheep are brought into sheltered pens at night, their woolly bodies huddled together for shared warmth. Extra straw is scattered thickly on floors, absorbing moisture and providing insulation from the frozen earth below. wind finds its voice then, whizzing softly around corners and through small gaps. A constant reminder of the world pressing in. Inside, the hearth burns steadily, tended through the night to ensure embers greet the reluctant dawn. Spring brings its own challenges. The meltwater swelling streams and turning paths to mud that clings heavily to boots. Fields must be plowed before the brief window for planting closes. The horse or oxen straining against wooden art plows that barely scratch the stony soil. Seeds are sown sparingly, saved from the previous harvest and sorted grain by grain for viability. Weeds compete fiercely in the short growing season, requiring constant attention to give crops any chance. Rain is welcomed when gentle, but sudden downpours can wash away topsoil or flood low-lying plots. The cycle demands vigilance without panic, adjustments made calmly based on signs read in clouds and wind. Summer offers the briefest respite, long days filled with relentless activity to gather what the land reluctantly yields. Berries are picked in baskets carried on backs, fingers stained purple from bilberries and red from lingonberries preserved in honey or water. Mushrooms appear after rains, gathered quickly before they spoil, spread to dry on rocks warmed by rare sun. Fishing intensifies along coasts or rivers, boats launched at dawn to set nets that fill with cod or herring if luck holds. Timber is felled selectively, branches trimmed for firewood, trunks reserved for repairs or trade. Every warm day is used fully, yet never frantically, paced to preserve strength for the labor ahead. Storage solutions reflect centuries of adaptation, raised granaries on stone pillars to deter mice, barrels sealed with pitch for ale or salted provisions, clay pots buried in cool earth for butter and cheese, baskets woven tightly from willow hold dried herbs and roots hung from beams to stay dry. Nothing is left to chance, surplus from good years cushions lean ones, shared quietly with kin when harvests fail elsewhere. Trade supplements local yields, iron tools or salt carried over mountain passes or along coastal routes in exchange for furs or amber. These connections are maintained carefully, threads of mutual support in an isolated world. The Longhouse endures through all seasons, its turf walls softening the extremes of heat and cold, its smoke hole allowing ventilation without losing precious warmth. Bears are methodical moths stuffed into cracks before winter, new turf laid in spring to replace what erosion claimed. The structure settles deeper into the earth over generations, becoming part of the landscape it defies. Its curved form sheds snow and wind alike, a quiet testament to practical design born of necessity. Inside, life continues in measured rhythm, attuned to the land's moods yet never overwhelmed by them. The practicalities of survival in this harsh northern land extend to every aspect of daily existence, from the clothing worn close to the skin to the tools gripped in callous hands. Garments are layered thoughtfully, linen undertunics woven fine for summer breathability, woolen overtunics thick for winter warmth, all mended repeatedly with patches cut from worn-out pieces. Shoes of turned leather, soles reinforced with wooden clogs or extra hides, protect feet from jagged rocks and boggy ground. Cloaks pinned with simple brooches of bone or iron ward off rain and wind during outdoor work. Every item is crafted for longevity, fibers spun tight, seams stitched strong, colors muted by natural dyes that fade gracefully over time. Hunting supplements, farming and fishing, boughs of yew or ash strung with sinew, arrows fletched with goose feathers gathered in spring. Traps of woven willow or pits lined with sharpened stakes catch smaller game hares, foxes, or birds that wander near the homestead. The chase is patient, trackers reading bent grasses or droppings in the quiet dawn light. Meat from successful hunts is shared among kin, portions smoked or salted to join the stores. Skins are tanned slowly with bark solutions, scraped clean with blunt blades, then softened for use in bags or bedding. This harvest from the wild eases pressure on cultivated fields, a quiet balance maintained through generations. Health is guarded with herbal knowledge, passed in murmurs by the hearth willow bark steeped for fevers, nettles boiled for strength, juniper berries chewed for digestion. Illness arrives unannounced, carried on trade winds or born of damp chills, met with infusions and rest on raised benches. Wounds from tools or thorns are washed in clean water, bound with clean linen, watched closely for signs of poison. Childbirth happens in the longhouse warmth, assisted by experienced women using simple cords and warm cloths. Life expectancy varies, cut short by accidents or harsh winters, yet communities endure through shared care. The rhythm accepts loss without drama, focusing on the living and the routines that sustain them. Defense of the homestead is understated but ever-present, axes and spears leaning near the door. Shields hung on walls more for readiness than display. Raids from neighbors or distant foes are rare in settled areas, but vigilance remains, dogs alert to strangers, paths watched from hilltops, fences double as barriers, thorny branches woven in to deter wandering livestock or unwanted visitors. Trade brings iron for better blades, exchanged for armor or furs at seasonal gatherings. Alliances are nurtured quietly, marriages linking farms, favors repaid in labor or goods. This web of connections provides security beyond individual strength. Knowledge of the stars guides night travel or planting times. Constellations traced in clear skies above the longhouse. Tides are read for fishing, moon phases for shearing or slaughter to ensure better preservation. Weather signs ring around the moon, bird migrations, wind shifts are observed daily, informing decisions on haymaking or boat launches. Runes carved on wood offer simple predictions or protections consulted in quiet moments. This attunement to natural cycles turns potential chaos into predictable patterns, allowing preparation without panic. As the landscape claims its toll, failed crops from early frost, animals lost to predators, roofs damaged in gales, the response is always measured in repair and adaptation. New fields are cleared inch by inch, stones piled into walls that expand enclosures over years. Boats are built smaller for rivers when larger ones prove unwieldy in shallows. Diets shift with availability, grains stretched with foraged greens, fish dried thinner in poor summers. The longhouse itself evolves, extensions added for growing families, old sections repurposed for storage. In this embrace of hardship, resilience grows not from defiance but from quiet harmony with the land's demands. As the sounds of the harsh land soften and recede, the gentle crackle of the central hearth returns to prominence, drawing your attention back to the warm heart of the longhouse. The wind outside eases to a whisper, rain tapering into silence, leaving only the familiar pop and hiss of burning logs. The rhythmic thud of the loom has stilled for the night. The distant animal calls faded into contented quiet. Immerse glows steadily in the shallow pit, casting a soft, unchanging light across the packed earth floor and the sleeping figures along the benches. In this returning calm, the longhouse feels timeless, a quiet vessel carrying its inhabitants through the cycles of hardship and renewal. The Vikings who lived within these walls were shaped by their environment, yet they shaped it in return with patient ingenuity and unyielding adaptability. Their days were filled with measured labor, not in pursuit of excess, but to secure the simple continuity of life amid uncertainty. Tools were forged for endurance, garments woven for protection, food preserved with foresight born of experience. Communities formed quiet networks of support, sharing resources and knowledge without fanfare. Resilience was not proclaimed loudly, it was lived daily in the steady swing of an axe, careful turn of a quern, the watchful tending of a fire. Their connection to the land ran deep, rooted in observation rather than domination. Seasons were read in the stars, the behavior of animals, the subtle shifts of wind and water. Resources were taken sparingly, timber from managed woods, fish from sustainable runs, game from balanced hunts. Waste was minimal, every part of an animal or plant finding purpose in the homestead cycle. This harmony was practical, ensuring survival across generations in a landscape that offered little margin for error. The longhouse itself embodied this partnership, its turf roof merging with the earth, its form echoing the curves of boats that carried them across seas. Spiritually, their world blended the seen and unseen in quiet acceptance. runes carved for protection, offerings made to maintain balance with forces beyond control. Tales told by the hearth preserved wisdom and identity, linking past to present in low, unhurried voices. Gods were part of the everyday, invoked not in grand ceremonies but in small rituals that acknowledged life's fragility. Death came as it did everywhere, claimed by cold, illness, or accident, yet the community endured, children learning the same rhythms from those who remained. The legacy of these people lies not in dramatic conquests alone, but in the quiet endurance that allowed settlement across vast northern reaches. Farms like this one dotted fjords and valleys, sustaining families through centuries of change. Skills in boat building opened new horizons. Trade routes carrying goods and ideas farther than raids ever could. Adaptability saw them navigate shifting climates, political landscapes, and cultural encounters. In time, their blood and traditions mingled with others, influencing languages, laws, and ways of life that persist today. Reflecting on this longhouse now, centuries removed, invites a gentle appreciation for the understated strength it represents. Modern comforts shield us from many of the challenges they face daily, yet the core of human persistence remains unchanged. The hearth's glow, the loom's rhythm, the animal's quiet presence all speak to a life lived in close attendance to necessity and nature. In this peaceful interior, surrounded by the fruits of careful labor, one senses the profound satisfaction of self-reliance tempered by community. The gentle crackle of the hearth continues its steady song, a thread connecting the present moment to countless evenings spent in similar longhouses. Across Scandinavia and beyond, the embers shift softly as a log settles, sending a brief glow upward into the hazy air before subsiding once more. Sleeping benches line the walls, draped with woolen blankets and soft hides, their occupants breathing in slow, even rhythms that match the fire's quiet pulse. Tools rest where they were laid down hours ago, spindles on shelves, querns covered against dust. Looms paused mid-row. The longhouse holds everything in gentle suspension, a space where effort yields to rest, and the day's labors dissolve into peaceful stillness. This enduring spirit of the Vikings was forged in the quiet demands of daily survival, where resilience grew from acceptance rather than resistance. They navigated treacherous seas in open boats, settled distant islands with the same practical designs carried in memory, adapted crops and livestock to new soils without complaint. Which was preserved orally, skills demonstrated rather than written, ensuring continuity even as communities spread. Women managed homesteads during long absences, and returned with goods that enriched rather than disrupted the careful balance. Change came gradually, absorbed into the rhythm of seasons and generations. Their influence lingers in subtle ways, place names echoing Old Norse across Britain, Iceland, and Normandy, legal traditions emphasizing communal decision-making, even words woven into modern languages for sea, sky, and home. Shipbuilding techniques revolutionized travel, enabling exploration that reshaped maps and minds. Agricultural methods suited to marginal and sustained populations where others might have faltered. Yet none of this was pursued for glory alone. It arose from the same quiet pragmatism that guided the tending of a hearth, or the stacking of firewood. And reflecting upon this longhouse now, one senses the profound dignity in lives lived close to necessity. There were no luxuries to distract from the essentials: warmth, food, shelter. Kinship all earned through steady effort and shared responsibility. Joy came in small measures: a successful harvest, a new calf, a garment completed after months at the loom. Sorrow arrived to lost crops, illness, absence, but was met with the same measured response that governed all things. Rhythm allowed space for both, neither overwhelming the careful equilibrium. Fire burns lower now, embers glowing like distant stars beneath a thin veil of ash. The longhouse timbers creak once softly as the night cools outside, then settle back into silence. Smoke lingers in the rafters, carrying faint traces of meals past and herbs dried for winter. Everything here speaks of continuity, of lives layered upon one another like the turf on the roof. In this quiet space, the past feels close enough to touch, yet distant enough to evoke gentle wonder at human persistence. As your own breathing slows in rhythm with the scene, contrast with the present becomes softly apparent. Modern homes shield us from wind and cold with effortless precision. Food arrives without seasons, uncertainty, light banishes darkness at the flick of a switch. Yet something essential remains shared, the need for warmth, for sustenance, for connection. The Viking Longhouse reminds us that comfort is not merely absence of hardship, but the quiet assurance that comes from meeting it capably. The hearth's embers have settled into a deep, steady glow. The occasional soft pop, the only sound breaking the profound hush of the longhouse. Shadows blend seamlessly with the darkened walls. Outlines of benches and stored provisions fading into gentle obscurity. The air remains warm and heavy with wood smoke. Familiar weight that encourages eyelids to grow heavier. Outside, the northern night stretches vast and silent, stars piercing the clear sky above the turf roof. When reduced to the faintest murmur through distant trees, within these walls, time seems to pause, allowing reflection to drift slowly, like smoke rising toward the vent. The true legacy of this way of life lies in its quiet lesson of sufficiency, finding enough in what the land and hands could provide without ceaseless striving for more. Families grew within the longhouse's embrace, children learning by watching and helping, elders offering guidance until their strength waned. Tools were repaired rather than replaced, garments handed down and remade, food shared without hesitation. Wealth was measured in stored provisions, healthy animals, strong relationships not in accumulation that burden rather than sustained. This approach carried them through centuries of challenge, from volcanic winters to shifting political tides, always adapting without losing core rhythms. Settlements endured where others faltered because decisions were rooted in practical observation rather than abstract ambition. Boats grew longer and stronger as needs changed, farms adjusted crops to new climates. Communities welcomed useful ideas from distant contacts. Change was absorbed gradually, tested against the measure of survival, retained if it served the quiet balance. Even as Christianity spread and kingdoms formed, the underlying patterns persisted: self-reliance tempered by community, respect for nature's limits, pride in skilled craftsmanship. Longhouses gave way to timber-framed halls, yet hearths remained central. Stories continued by firelight. The same hands that once wove sails now crafted finer cloth for trade. The same boats carried merchants rather than raiders. Transition was gentle in many places, the old ways lingering in daily habits long after grander shifts. Now, in the profound stillness of this imagined longhouse, the modern world feels gently distant. Lights that never dim, sounds that never cease, choices that multiply endlessly, all recede before the simple certainty of fire and shelter. Here, rest comes naturally, earned by the day's honest labor and secured by careful preparation. The embers hold their warmth long into the night, promising renewal with morning's first kindling. As your thoughts soften and drift, allow the quiet power of this past to settle over you like a warm blanket. Vikings' enduring spirit was not in thunderous deeds alone, but in the patient persistence that built lives worth living in a demanding world. Their longhouses stood as testaments to human capability, not conquest of nature, but coexistence with it. In this peaceful interior, surrounded by the gentle evidence of resilience, may you find the same deep rest they knew after a day well spent. The fire glows faintly now, a steady heartbeat in the darkness. Breathe slowly, let the rhythms fade, and drift gently into sleep, carrying on the quiet legacy of those who tended hearths like this one long ago. Good night. Thank you for joining me on this quiet journey through the rhythms of a Viking longhouse. May the gentle sounds of hearth and home linger with you as you rest. Until next time, sleep well.